Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. The next time you look out at the ocean and see one of those massive, gleaming vessels sitting right on the horizon, I want you to stop and just think about the sheer, mind boggling feat of engineering and business that put it there. Because these aren't just boats, they are literally cities on the water. So today, we are going to unpack the incredible history, the mechanics, and the unbelievable scale of the modern cruise line industry. We're going to answer the question, what exactly is the cruise line industry today? Here is our itinerary for today. We'll kick things off with the modern floating resort, trace the industry's history from mail to megaships, look at how there's a cruise for every traveler, explore the big three industry giants, and finally, unpack the economics and future sustainability. Let's get right to it. So, first stop, Section 1, the modern floating resort, rethinking the ship. To really get this, we have to completely redefine what a ship actually is in the modern era. Think about it. Unlike the traditional ocean liners of the past, where the main job was literally just getting you from continent A to continent B, today's ships are engineered purely around recreation. So the absolutely crucial point here is that a modern cruise ship isn't really transportation at all. It's a mobile urban environment. It's a completely self-contained floating resort, where the ship itself is the destination. We are talking about vessels equipped with massive water parks, dozens of dining options, Broadway-style theaters, high-end spas, the whole shebang. Sure, the itinerary might include port visits for some brief excursions, but the onboard environment, that is truly the core component of the vacation. But how on earth did we get here? Section 2. From mail to megaships. The pivot to leisure. To understand these massive floating cities, we really have to look back at the history. Back in the early 1800s, companies like P&O and Cunard operated packet ships. Their primary job? Carrying the mail and transporting passengers who literally had no other way to cross the oceans. And what's wild is that as passengers started demanding a bit more comfort, early luxuries were added. We're talking about keeping a live cow on board just so first-class passengers could have fresh milk. Fast forward a bit to 1900 and we hit a massive milestone. The German ship Prinzessin Victoria Louise was launched. This was the very first vessel designed from the ground up, entirely for pleasure voyages, not just transport. Then, after the golden age of iconic liners, the mid-20th century brought a huge disruption. That disruption led directly into the 1970s boom, which is when companies like Carnival introduced their affordable fun ships and popular TV shows brought the idea of cruising right into mainstream living rooms. That mid-20th century disruption I just mentioned, it was a massive paradigm shift. See, traditional ocean liners were necessity-driven. They were point-to-point transport. But then, affordable commercial air travel comes along, and it almost killed the passenger ship industry overnight. I mean, why take a grueling week to cross the Atlantic when you could just fly in a few hours? This forced the industry into an absolute corner. To survive, they had to completely reinvent the ship into what we know today. They pivoted to round-trip itineraries, usually in warm, sunny climates, and focused entirely on entertainment and destination-based leisure. Basically, they literally had to invent the modern cruise vacation just to stay afloat. And reinvent they did, which brings us to Section 3, a cruise for every traveler, diverse ecosystems on the water. Having survived that near-death experience in the mid-century, the industry expanded rapidly by specializing. It's like a giant buffet now. Whether you're looking for a massive, mainstream family vacation packed with resort features or maybe a quiet river journey right into the heart of a historic European city, they've built an ecosystem for it. You've got your mainstream and megaships, marvels of modern engineering that can comfortably accommodate over 5,000 passengers with high-tech entertainment, but it's not all about sheer size. Luxury ships focus on highly personalized, high-end service. And if you're the adventurous type, expedition ships are these rugged ice-class vessels engineered specifically to safely take you to remote places like the Arctic or Antarctica. Now, here is something that might actually surprise you. If we look at the global fleet profile today, and the industry measures this in something called lower berths, which is basically just the standard fixed beds in a cabin, there's a really interesting balance. We hear so much in the media about the massive 5,000-plus passenger mega ships, right? But surprisingly, the biggest chunk of the pie, 39% of the global fleet, actually falls into the mid-sized range, that's ships with 1,000 to 2,999 berths. Another 34% have fewer than 1,000 lower berths, catering to those intimate, small ship or expedition experiences we just talked about. Those massive vessels holding 3,000 or more, they only make up 28%. And looking at the future order book stretching all the way out to 2036, this balance profile is expected to stay incredibly stable. Operating these highly specialized, incredibly complex fleets requires massive scale. Which brings us to Section 4, the big three industry giants, controlling the market. Okay, so who actually owns all these floating cities? Well, it mostly comes down to the big three. These groups control the vast majority of the global market, acting as these massive umbrella corporations. Take Carnival Corporation, for example. They don't just operate the Carnival cruise line. They also own premium brands like Princess and Holland America. And yep, even the legendary Cunard line. Then you've got the Royal Caribbean Group, managing its huge namesake brand right alongside premium celebrity cruises and the ultra-luxury Silver Sea. Finally, the MSC Group operates MSC Cruises and the Luxury Explorer Journeys. The really crucial takeaway for you here? The illusion of choice. No matter what kind of vacation you book or which niche brand you think you're choosing, your money is very likely flowing right up to one of these three corporate titans. So how do they make it all work behind the scenes? Section 5. Economics and future sustainability, keeping the floating cities afloat. The economic ripple effect of these floating cities is just enormous. It operates in a very clear three-step flow. Think of it like dropping a giant stone into a pond. Step 1 is the direct spend. This is the obvious stuff. The money you spend as a passenger, plus what the cruise lines themselves spend on operations and building the ships. But the ripples keep going. Step 2 is the indirect impact. Think about all the goods and services a city at sea actually needs. Food, linens, maintenance equipment, fuel. That creates a massive business-to-business supply chain effect all over the world. And finally, step 3 is the induced impact. This is the economic boost that happens when a cruise line employee takes their wages and buys groceries or pays rent back in their home country. It is a massive, highly interconnected economic web. Now, to track profitability on a day-to-day basis across that massive web, the industry relies on a specific metric called net yields. This is measured against available passenger cruise days, or APCD. I know, it sounds a bit like accounting jargon, but it's actually the industry's ultimate lie detector for profitability. See, gross yields is just total revenue, but net yields strips away the biggest variable costs, like travel agent commissions and transportation. By dividing this by the available cruise days, basically double occupancy multiplied by the days of the cruise, companies get an incredibly precise metric. It tells them exactly how much pure value they are generating per passenger per day. That gives them absolute control over pricing and performance across their entire fleet. All right, I want to share a truly wild fact with you. Ready? Despite their massive economic footprint, their cultural impact, and their sheer physical size, cruise ships actually make up less than 1% of the world's commercial fleet. Less than 1%. It is honestly mind-blowing when you consider the sheer amount of public attention they command. When you picture all the cargo ships, the oil tankers, the bulk carriers constantly moving across the oceans, cruise ships are just a tiny, tiny fraction. Yet, because they are so high-profile and passenger-facing, they face immense, intense scrutiny regarding their environmental impact. And because they are essentially floating cities, their environmental responsibilities are huge. To combat emissions, they're implementing things like OPS, or onshore power supply. This is a game changer. It allows these massive vessels to literally plug into a land-based electrical grid and completely shut off their main engines while they're docked. Why should you care? Because it means they can dock right in the middle of a historic coastal city without blanketing the port in smog. They also use AWTS, Advanced Wastewater Treatment Systems. These process wastewater to standards that actually surpass many coastal shoreside treatment facilities. Actually, scratch that. It's not just many. Modern ships are becoming some of the most environmentally advanced vessels in history. The industry is also heavily investing in ships powered by liquefied natural gas, drastically reducing emissions as they sail toward a greener future. So as these incredible floating resorts continue to innovate beyond anything the early ocean liners could have ever dreamed of, we have to ask, what revolutionary features will the cruise ship of tomorrow offer? We've seen how they evolved from basic mail carriers with live cows on deck to sophisticated, highly sustainable mega resorts forming a multi-billion-dollar economic web. The rapid pace of green technology suggests the next decade of cruising is going to be almost unrecognizable. So the next time you look out at the horizon and spot one of these floating cities, ask yourself, what revolutionary features will you be sailing on 10 years from now? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep exploring, and I'll catch you next time.